I noticed the candles before I noticed anything else. 12 of them, ivory and tall, arranged in a perfect circle around the centerpiece my daughter had placed on the dining room table. The good china was out, the crystal glasses I kept in the hutch for special occasions. The linen napkins I had ironed myself and stored in lavender sachets. The smell of garlic butter drifted from the kitchen, warm and rich, and for a moment I stood at the top of the stairs and let myself believe it. I had turned 67 that morning. I had told no one to go to any trouble, but standing there in the hallway, smoothing the front of the blue dress I had not worn since my retirement dinner 3 years ago, I thought maybe my daughter had listened after all. I walked down slowly, one hand on the banister, the other pressing the small silver pin at my collar, the one my husband Raymond had given me the year before the cancer took him. The dining room glowed. 2. Place settings. I counted again. 2. Claire came out of the kitchen carrying a platter, her hair pinned up the way she wore it when she was trying to impress someone. She stopped when she saw me. "Oh," she said. "Mom, I thought you were staying upstairs tonight." I looked at the table. I looked at her. "It's my birthday," I said. She set the platter down without looking at me. "Brett made reservations for us last week." I forgot to mention it. Brett appeared behind her in the doorway, already in his sport coat, already reaching for his phone. He gave me the kind of glance you give a piece of furniture you are deciding whether to move. "There's leftover soup in the microwave," he said. "From yesterday. Should still be fine." Claire did not contradict him. She adjusted a napkin on the table, straightening something already straight. And I understood then that she was not going to look at me. Not because she was embarrassed, but because, Thatsumanoi, she had already decided this was acceptable. I was standing in my own dining room, in my own house, which I had paid for alone for 22 years, wearing a dress for a birthday dinner that was not for me. My daughter was about to sit down to filet mignon and candlelight, and she had left me yesterday's soup. I said nothing. I turned around, walked back upstairs, sat on the edge of my bed, and listened to them laugh about something below me while I ate crackers from the sleeve I kept in my nightstand drawer. That night, I did not cry. I was too tired for crying. I was tired in the way you get when something has been happening slowly for so long that the moment you finally see it clearly, you realize the exhaustion was never from one night. It was from 2 years of small erosions. 2 years of being managed. 2 years of watching my own home reorganize itself around my daughter and her husband until I became the background of their lives. Raymond and I had built this house in 1987, the year after I started teaching. We raised 2 children here. My son moved to Portland and calls every Sunday. My daughter moved back 23 months ago after her second business failed. Their savings dissolved, and Brett lost his position at the firm. I had told them, of course, take the guest room. Take your time. Find your footing. I meant it. I cleared out closets. I learned to cook around Brett's dietary preferences. I kept the television on the channels they liked. I took shorter showers because Brett said the water pressure in the morning was better when it was just him. I told myself it was temporary. But thukte la. It was not temporary. I opened the closet and pulled down the cardboard box I had labeled Simply Documents. Inside was everything I had kept from the last 2 years. Receipts where I had covered their car insurance 3 months straight after Brett said they were between accounts. A printed email thread where my daughter asked me to wire money for what she called a vendor deposit for the new business she and Brett were starting. The wire confirmation, then another. The business had not launched. I had asked twice and been told it was in process. At the bottom of the box was something I had not put there. It was a folded printout tucked beneath a bank statement, as if it had been slipped in and forgotten. I unfolded it slowly. It was from a real estate website, a comparative market analysis for homes in my zip code. My address was written by hand at the top in Brett's blocky print. Below it were estimated sale values, 2 of them circled, and a handwritten note, after payoff and split roughly $180K each. Timeline depends on her. I sat very still for a long time. Her. I was her. They had been calculating what my house was worth after I was removed from the picture. I did not know what split meant or who the other half was for. I did not know when this had been written. What I knew, sitting in the bedroom I had slept in since 1987, was that my daughter and her husband were not guests in my home. They were waiting for it. I placed the paper back in the box. I closed the lid. Then I went to the bathroom, washed my face, and lay down on top of the covers without changing. I stared at the ceiling for most of the night. Not in panic. In clarity. There is a difference, and I had spent too many years confusing one for the other. By 5 o'clock in the morning, I was dressed. Dark slacks. A white blouse. My good coat. I moved quietly through the house, past the closed door where my daughter slept, past the kitchen where the remains of last night's dinner still sat in pans on the stove. No one had offered to save me a plate. The soup I had eaten from a mug upstairs was still sitting on my nightstand. Outside, the Georgia morning was cool and damp. The sky a pale gray that comes just before the light decides what it wants to be. I sat in my car in the driveway for a moment, the engine idling, and looked at the front of the house. Window boxes Raymond had built. The porch swing we had bought this summer our son turned 12. The oak tree in the yard that was not much taller than a sapling when we planted it, and was now wide enough that 3 people could not wrap their arms around it. I had not been planning this moment. But Deodang Chui La. I had been ready for it longer than I knew. My bank opened at 8:30. I was in the parking lot at 8. The woman who called me to her desk was named Denise, and I had worked with her before when Raymond passed and I needed to restructure accounts. She was patient and thorough, and she did not waste words on things that did not need saying. I set the documents folder on her desk and told her what I needed. I want to remove all secondary account access, I said, and I want to review every automatic transfer and recurring charge for the last 2 years. She pulled up my accounts and we went through them together. The first thing that surfaced was an auto transfer I had set up originally to help with Claire's car loan, but the amount had been adjusted. I had authorized $200 a month. It had been changed to $350, and the change had been made from a linked device I did not recognize. I stared at the number. When was that changed? Denise checked. 14 months ago. I had been paying $350 a month to an account I believed held $200 for over a year. I had not caught it because I trusted the arrangement. Because I trusted my daughter. Because when you love someone, you do not audit them. There's more, Denise said gently, and she turned the monitor slightly toward me. A credit card linked to my primary account, a card I used for household purchases and emergencies, had 3 charges I did not recognize from the past 6 weeks. A hotel stay in Savannah, 2 nights, a restaurant charge over $300, a deposit to what appeared to be an attorney's office. An attorney. Brett had already made contact with someone. Freeze that card, I said, and close it entirely as soon as the billing cycle allows. Denise typed steadily. Is there anything else you'd like to change today? I thought of the paper in my box at home. The circled numbers. Timeline depends on her. I'd like to talk about removing authorized access to my home equity line, I said. And I need to know if anyone has made inquiries against my property in the last year. She checked. Someone had run a soft inquiry on the property 6 months ago. The name attached to the inquiry was not Brett. It was a real estate company. For a moment, the office felt very small. I breathed through it. Can that inquiry be flagged and blocked going forward? I asked. I can add a monitoring alert, she said. Any future inquiry will require your direct authorization. We spent the next hour making changes. Transfers halted, card frozen, new passwords, new security questions. An alert added to any access attempt from an unrecognized device. When the last confirmation printed and Denise slid it across the desk, I felt something I had not expected to feel. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Something quieter. The feeling of standing on ground that was finally only mine. Thank you, Denise, I said. She looked at me with the steady warmth of someone who had seen many versions of this kind of morning. You take care of yourself, she said. I drove from the bank to the law office of Thomas Abernathy, who had drawn up my will 12 years ago, and who I had not needed since. The receptionist remembered me and brought me back without an appointment when I explained it was important. Thomas was older than I remembered. His hair gone fully white, but his eyes were the same, sharp and kind in equal measure. He rose when I came in. Margaret, he said. Sit down. Tell me what's going on." I told him all of it, the 2 years of payments, the credit card charges, the market analysis with my address and Brett's handwriting, and the circled sale estimates, the attorney inquiry on my property that I could not yet trace. Thomas listened without interrupting, which is one of the reasons I had chosen him years ago. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, his pen resting on the legal pad he had not yet written on. "I have to tell you something," he said. I told him I would try. 4 months ago, a man called this office asking about the process for establishing financial power of attorney. He did not give his name right away, but when our paralegal asked for the relationship to the subject, he said he was the son-in-law. Thomas paused. I was not here for the call. Our paralegal gave general information only, and no further contact was made. But when you describe this man to me now, I believe it was the same person. The air in the room seemed to shift the way it does before a storm changes direction. Power of attorney. He had been researching how to make financial decisions on my behalf, how to sign documents in my name, how to make a sale. He never told me. He never filed anything formal, Thomas said. But the fact that he was gathering information means this has been planned for longer than a recent argument or a hard month. He leaned forward slightly. Margaret, I'd like to help you protect yourself today if you'll let me. That's why I'm here, I said. We began with the will. Thomas listed current beneficiaries, and I listened to my own choices read back to me the way a doctor reads a diagnosis, plainly, without drama. My daughter was listed as primary heir for the house, and a significant portion of my savings. I had written that will when she was 29, and I believed, the way mothers do, that the people your children become will resemble the children you knew. I want to change it, I said. Thomas looked at me over his glasses. To what? I want to establish a trust for my grandchildren, I said. My son's children, and if she chooses differently from her parents someday, my daughter's children as well, managed by a trustee until each of them is 25. I paused. I want my daughter and her husband removed as beneficiaries of the house and primary accounts. And the house itself? He asked. While I'm living, I want to add a deed restriction, I said. Nothing can be transferred or sold without my written, notarized in-person authorization, and I want that recorded at the county today if possible. Thomas wrote steadily. It's possible, he said. This is a decisive set of changes. Yes, I said. It is. He did not try to talk me out of it. He did not soften the edges. He simply helped me build the structure of a life that could not be disassembled without my knowledge. With each document I signed, I felt the strange quiet that comes not from resolution, but from truth. I was not punishing my daughter, but thuktela. I was refusing to disappear. When the final page was signed and witnessed and Thomas had arranged for the deed filing that afternoon, I stood and thanked him. He walked me to the door himself, something he had not done in years. You know, he said at the threshold. Most people who come in here after something like this spend half the appointment asking me whether they're being too harsh. He tilted his head slightly. You didn't ask that once. Because I already know the answer, I said. The drive home took longer than usual. Not because I was avoiding it, but because I was thinking clearly for the first time in 2 years. And clarity moves at its own pace. The Georgia afternoon had burned through the morning clouds, and the light was the particular gold of October, warm without warmth, beautiful without softness. When I turned onto my street, I saw Brett's car in the driveway at an angle that suggested he had arrived in a hurry. The front door was standing slightly open. I parked. I sat for a moment. Then I got out and walked up the porch steps and into my own house. They were in the kitchen. I heard Claire's voice first, tight and compressed, the way it gets when she is frightened and trying not to show it. Brett was pacing, his phone in one hand and his jacket bunched in the other. The card was declined at the gas station, he was saying, and the transfer I was expecting didn't come through. Something's wrong with her account. Then, call the bank, Claire said. I tried. They won't discuss her account with me, obviously. He turned when he heard me come in, and his expression shifted to something I had not seen from him before. Not irritation, something closer to calculation resolving into performance. Margaret, he said, almost warmly, We were just about to call you. There seems to be some kind of bank error. I set my purse on the counter. There's no error, I said. A beat of silence. Claire looked at me. Brett looked at the phone in his hand. What does that mean? He said slowly. It means I made changes to my accounts this morning, I said. All secondary access has been removed. All automatic transfers have been stopped. The card linked to my household account has been frozen. Claire's face had gone pale. Mom, I also spoke with Thomas Abernathy today, I said. He's updating my will and filing a deed restriction on the property. Brett's performance collapsed. The warmth left his face the way a light goes out. Immediate. Complete. You can't just... He stopped, recalibrated. My daughter took a step toward me, and I saw something move across her face. A complicated motion between what she wanted to say and what she had been rehearsing to say. Mom, I know things have been tense. I know last night was... I should have handled that better. But this is our home too. We've been living here, contributing. You have not contributed financially, I said. In 23 months, the total amount paid toward household expenses by you and your husband is $420. I have the receipts. I kept my voice even. I also know that someone adjusted my auto transfer without my knowledge, and that charges were made on my linked credit card for a hotel stay and a restaurant dinner and an attorney's retainer that I did not authorize. The room went very still. Brett's jaw tightened. I can explain those. You don't need to, I said. The accounts are already changed. The explanation wouldn't alter the changes. Claire's eyes were filling, but they were not the eyes of someone who had been unjustly accused. They were the eyes of someone who had been caught standing beside a person who did something wrong and had said nothing. There is a difference. I had looked at those eyes my whole life, and I knew the difference. I found the market analysis, I said quietly, the one with my address and the circled numbers. Timeline depends on her. I am her. The color left my daughter's face completely. Brett said nothing. Before either of them could speak again, I heard the soft creak of the stairs. A small face appeared in the doorway. My granddaughter Emma, my son's youngest, who had been staying with me for the week while her parents attended a conference in Atlanta. She was 13, and she had the particular attentiveness of a child who has been listening through walls and trying to make sense of adult weather. She looked at me, then at her aunt, then at Brett. Her voice, when it came, was careful. Grandma, are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart, I said. Go on back upstairs. I'll come find you soon. She didn't move right away. She looked at Brett with the clear, unfiltered assessment of a child who has not yet learned to pretend she does not see what she sees. Then she said, so quietly it was almost to herself, I heard him on the phone last week. He was talking to someone about listing the property in spring. He said Grandma wouldn't be a problem. The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. Brett took a step forward. Emma, she's 13 years old, I said, and something in my voice stopped him where he stood. And she is telling the truth. Emma looked at me steadily, her eyes bright with something between fear and relief. The way children look when they have finally said out loud the thing they have been carrying alone. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, she said. You told me now, I said. She went. And in the silence she left behind, my daughter made a sound I had not heard since she was a little girl. A single involuntary exhale that was not quite a cry and not quite a word. Just the sound of something breaking open. She put her hand over her mouth. Brett was already constructing something. I could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his eyes moved side to side, the way they do when he is building a sentence rather than feeling one. This has been misunderstood, he began. Don't, my daughter said. She said it quietly, but that single word had a weight I had not heard from her in years. He turned to her. Claire, don't. She looked at him with the eyes of a woman who had spent 2 years choosing a version of a story that was easier to live inside than the truth. I saw that paper too, she said. 3 weeks ago, you told me it was hypothetical research. You told me you were just curious about the market. He opened his mouth. She looked away from him and toward me, and what I saw in her face was not the entitlement I had been bracing myself against. It was shame. Old, layered, complicated shame. The kind that comes from knowing you have become someone you would not have recognized 10 years ago. "Mom," she said, and her voice cracked on the single syllable. "I don't know when I stopped." She pressed her fingers against her forehead. "I don't know when I let things get this far." I looked at my daughter. I had known her since before she knew herself. I had held her through a fever at 4 years old and sat outside her dorm room at 2 o'clock in the morning when her first engagement fell apart, and driven 6 hours to help her pack up her apartment after the second business closed. I knew her the way you only know someone you have loved imperfectly through years of imperfect living. "What happens next is up to you," I said. "Not to him." Brett picked up his jacket from the counter. He looked between us once, a look that contained no remorse, only the recalculation of someone who has run the numbers and found they no longer work. Then he walked out through the back door without speaking. I heard his car start in the driveway and then fade down the street. Claire sat down on one of the kitchen chairs and covered her face with both hands. I did not comfort her immediately. I put the kettle on. I took 2 cups from the cabinet, the everyday ones, not the good china. I waited. After a while, the water came to a boil, and I made us each a cup of tea and set hers in front of her without speaking. She wrapped both hands around the cup and stared into it. "I kept telling myself you didn't mind," she said finally. "That you wanted to help, that it was what you did." "I did want to help," I said, "but wanting to help and being taken from are not the same thing, and I let the line between them blur for a long time. I should have seen it." She swallowed. "I should have been protecting you, not standing next to someone who was." She could not finish the sentence. "Yes," I said simply. There was nothing softer to offer, and she did not need me to make it softer. She needed me to tell the truth. We sat in the kitchen for a long time, the tea cooling between us. Eventually, she asked me what the changes meant practically going forward. I told her plainly. The accounts were protected, the deed was restricted. The will had been changed. She would need to find another living arrangement. Not immediately, not cruelly, but with a clear and honest timeline that we would set together. She nodded at each thing without arguing. That itself told me something. Before she went upstairs that night, she paused in the doorway. "The soup from my birthday dinner," I said before she could speak. That's the moment I knew. Not the accounts, not the paper, just your own mother's birthday. And you left her soup from the day before. Claire closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were small and direct, and they did not try to explain themselves away. "I know," I said. I sat alone in the kitchen after she went up. The house was quiet in the way it used to be quiet a long time ago, when it was just mine and Raymond's, and the children were asleep, and we would sit at this same table and talk about nothing important until midnight. I could feel him in the kitchen, the way you feel people who have been gone long enough that they stop being a grief and start being a presence. After a while, I heard small footsteps on the stairs. Emma appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, her hair loose around her face, looking half asleep and half resolved. "Can I sit with you for a minute?" she asked. "Of course," I said. She climbed onto the chair across from me and folded her hands on the table the way adults do. For a moment, she just looked at me with the serious, unguarded tenderness of a child who loves someone without complication. "Are you really okay?" she asked. "I am," I said, genuinely. "Dad is going to be really proud of you," she said. When I tell him, something warm moved through my chest. "Don't tell him on my account," I said. "Tell him because you want to." She smiled, a small, sleepy smile. We sat like that for a while, grandmother and granddaughter in a kitchen that smelled like tea and old wood, and 40 years of a life still standing. When I finally went to bed, I did not lie awake. I slept deeply and without interruption for the first time in longer than I could accurately remember. Morning came in through the curtains I had chosen myself, the yellow ones with the small white pattern Raymond had let me pick. Even though he said they were too bright for a bedroom. They were too bright. I made coffee instead of tea. I opened the back door and let the October air come inside, cool and smelling of leaves and the particular Georgia morning that arrives only in that thin space between summer giving up and winter not yet ready to commit. A cardinal landed on the fence post at the edge of the yard and sat there for a moment. Red as confidence. Then it was gone. My phone was on the counter. I picked it up and saw a message from my son. Emma called me last night. She told me everything. I'm so sorry I wasn't paying better attention, Mom. I'm booking a flight. I'll be there Thursday. I read it twice, then I set the phone down and stood at the back door with my coffee and watched the yard. A few minutes later, a second message came in. This one from Claire. I made an appointment with a therapist for next week. I'm going to figure out how I let myself become someone I don't recognize. I know that doesn't fix anything you've been through, but I wanted you to know I'm not running from it. I did not respond immediately. I let the message sit. The way you let something steep long enough to become what it is. Then I typed back. That is a good first step. Take it one at a time. I did not tell her everything was fine. It was not fine yet. But Durang Shuila, it was honest. And honesty was the only material I had left to build anything with. Later that morning, I walked to the end of the driveway and stood at the edge of the yard, coffee cup in hand, looking up at the oak tree Raymond and I had planted the year we moved in. The leaves were beginning to turn, gold at the tips, still holding the green at the center. In another week or two, the color would come in fully, and the yard would look the way it always does in October, like something that costs nothing and cannot be bought. I had spent 2 years making myself smaller, fitting myself into corners of my own house, adjusting my habits around people who had never asked themselves whether their comfort came at a cost to mine. I had done it from love, and I had done it from loneliness, and I had done it from the stubborn, generous, ultimately unsustainable belief that giving without limits is the same as loving without limits. It is not. What I understand now, standing in the yard where I have stood 1,000 times, is that the women who give the most are often the least asked. We do not wait to be thanked. We do not track the ledger. We fold the towels and cover the bills and sit quietly at the end of the table and tell ourselves that love looks like endurance. But thuktela, endurance without voice is not love, it is disappearance. And you cannot love anyone well from a place where you no longer exist. I am 67 years old. I taught school for 31 years. I raised 2 children in this house and buried the man I loved in it and kept it standing through every year that followed. I am not fragile. I was never fragile. I had simply been practicing a kind of silence, so long I had forgotten it was a choice. I am choosing differently now. The oak tree stood against the morning sky, solid and unhurried. Everything it had become rooted in what it had survived. I have always loved that tree. I have never once thought it was too much, taking up that much space in the yard. And Tatsu Manoi, I do not intend to make myself small again. If this story touched something in you, leave your thoughts below. If you have ever had a moment when you stopped disappearing and chose to stand in your own space again, I would want to hear it. And if you want to stay with stories like this, you already know what to do.